The film board gathers. The gang of thugs is here to take on a movie currently in theaters, and this month, we're just trying to get out alive. We've injected ourselves with the black gooey blood, and we've reprogrammed all our synthetics, and I'm sure if we could just find another elevator, I'm just sure we'll be able to get to the ship with no problems at all, because the mighty corporate machine has our best interest at heart, and I'm Pete Wright, and I'm here with Tommy Metz III and Steve Sarmento, and we're here for Alien Romulus.
Is this really where you want to spend the rest of your life?
You know I don't.
Then this is our only ticket out of here.
What's happening?
There's something in the water.
What do you mean there's something in the water?
No, there's just something in the fucking water. Fucking thing's hunting us.
Open the door, come on.
Run.
Alien Romulus, you guys. Okay, first of all, opening thoughts. How were you excited? Were you exhilarated, or were you filled with anxiety going into the theater for another big screen Alien experience? Tom?
I was very excited. The trailer got me excited. I'm a medium-sized fan of the director, but when you give a good set piece to him, he really hits it out of the park. In Evil Dead and the first Don't Breathe, I didn't see the second one, which I heard was bonkers. So I was really excited for that someone was wresting it out of the weird hands of Ridley Scott, who I admire, but he wants to make different movies, and the only way he can get them bankrolled is by shoving an alien in it. So I was excited to go back and actually have something about the aliens, for the aliens, with the aliens. So I was very excited going into this, and legitimately nervous, because I find Alien to be one of the most terrifying movie monsters in history.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same seat as Tommy. The original Alien is one of my top movies of all time. I love that movie so much. I saw it, I was 9 or 10 years old or something. It was just really formative experience. It didn't give me nightmares, didn't freak me out, but just there was something mythic about that story. Just the small crew, there was something like that just always resonates with me. I enjoy the franchise. It's gone in different directions. None of them, live up to that first one. So I was intrigued by where they would go with a new entry in this, and the idea of, we're going to slot ourselves in just after the first one. I thought, okay, smart idea. And then from the trailer, okay, it's got the look, it's got the feel of this. I'm cautiously optimistic about this, but I've been in that seat before, so I was prepared for being let down, but everything was telling me there should be some moments to this that I will enjoy.
Also, it's the film board, and our hit rate is not great either. You might say that the act of us choosing a movie dooms it, as it did with Prometheus, right? That was, I think, the first film board we ever did was Prometheus, and we didn't love it. So I too was anxious. I deboxed it, and I was just ready to be thrown around, and I wanted to jump. I just wanted to jump. I wanted to jump so hard, I ate most of my popcorn before the movie started because I didn't want to throw it up in the air. And that's where we start with Alien Romulus. Here's the story. We follow the story of Rain Carradine, an orphan working at the Jackson Star Colony with her adoptive brother Andy, a reprogrammed artificial human, thank you, when Rain and her friends embark on a mission to retrieve a cryonic stasis chamber, or set of cryonic stasis chambers from a derelict spacecraft that just happens to be orbiting above their fair planet. They unknowingly revive frozen facehuggers, our favorite friends, and that triggers naturally a chain of events that puts their lives in danger. As they navigate the divided station, that's right, it wasn't just a spacecraft, it was a space station. Romulus and Remus, they encounter the deadly xenomorphs from the poster, no spoiler, and uncover the dark secrets of the station. Time is running out, and Rain and her companions must fight for survival and make difficult decisions to ensure their escape from the doomed station. I'll tell you what I loved about this. Just kind of hitching my giddy up to Steve. The idea of putting us back in the narrative with the small crew who's there to do something else. They have no expertise. They're not space marines. They're not scientists. They're just dummies trying to get away from a hard life. Their life sucks, right? And they're just trying to get away from Weyland-Yutani machine. And that, I think, is such a gloriously perfect setup for this. From there on, the movie plays a lot of the hits, right? If you love the Alien movies, you're going to get a lot of Alien stuff. I'll tell you, for me, that worked like a charm. As it happens, I'm a fan of the hits, and Fede Alvarez gave me exactly what I wanted. Am I alone there? Did you guys feel like you were in the hot seat with Fede?
I appreciated it. I think that's fun. Maybe it's because the last movie I see before this was Wolverine and Deadpool, the most meta, self-referential movie in the world. So potentially it has opened up my brain for more of this that maybe I would have called it fan service. And there was one element of fan service that I feel very weird about. But in the beginning, when in the very opening, you see the bird dipping its head into the water and someone mentions the cornbread, like right there, we're in... we've got lines from movies coming in, but it feels organic. It feels new. I muted my mic. I got so excited. Yeah, it was a neat mashup. I thought a neat mashup. I've talked to a couple other people that saw it, and they actually thought it was derivative. But I liked that it was a mashup of 1 and 2 in the effect of we got the small crew, but then you had the army of aliens, and the small crew doesn't have any weapons. So it's a mix of 1 and 2, but it's taking different elements that made it, I thought, for a lot of it, absolutely thrilling. I was scared out of my wits in this movie. And I really love starting with the world building down on that horrible Weyland-Yutani planet.
Yeah.
We've never really spent that amount of time in this dystopian Weyland-Yutani universe and we've seen people in labs, but not other than like cutscenes from Alien 3. We haven't seen a lot of that. And so I was really excited.
Yeah, I agree with Tommy. I don't think it's derivative. It's like echoes across the universe. You get those things like, yes, the little bird dipping pieces in there. And there were other shots, there were other things where it's not an exact replica, but it's hearkening to, in the spirit of, there was a lot of that. So it felt very much of a piece in the same universe without being a retread, reheat, where it's like, oh, it's a sequel / prequel, but we're going to hit all the same story points and it's going to seem really familiar. It didn't have that. There were familiar moments, the things that, but not to the point of fan service for some of them. Some of them I think go too far, but in general, it gave me what I wanted, but there was a bit of freshness to it. Yes, I would love the fact that, Alien has our, space truckers, just, trying to get through, on this job and get paid. And here we start with miners that are just being, taken advantage of. Oh, you think you got out? Oh, sorry. No, you've got another 5 years of just being ground up and used by the corporation. We're getting that other side of it. I thought, oh, yes, we've got the same type of characters. I love that fact that it's keeping us within the comfortable territory, but doing some slightly different things. And I like the elements that it brought through, so that it felt like a new yet familiar entry in the franchise.
Did you see, as much as you see, and I think, Tom, you're exactly right. Like, I love the idea of mashing up, like this exists between Alien and Aliens, and we're exploring sort of the mechanics of each of those. How did the hints, the nods of the first two, like the prequels, Covenant and Prometheus, hit you? Like, the whole mashup to me is, okay, we've got the space truckers, but now they're the space mining kids, and they're trying to get off. We have that whole setup, but what they discover are remnants of corporate infrastructure. And that's what all of the first two movies is about, right? The prequels. It's all about that. So for me, so much of what this movie does really well is it mashes up the ignoramuses on the planet who are just trying to find a better world, and the corporate sort of greed machine trying to create the perfect weapons that's been floating above them the whole time in this space station. And they run headlong into it, and they see it. They get to sort of peel it back, for the first time. A lot of them. I mean, there's no conspiracy theory. Nobody knew what they were getting into when they walked onto this ship, and I thought that worked really well.
Up until a point. I love, because every of the first two Alien movies especially is about Weyland-Yutani is the worst. And Mother is not to be trusted. It's the bastardization of everything you're supposed to feel, that the company is the worst, Mother's the worst. Robots that are programmed to not hurt you are not to be trusted. Everything gets turned. I loved all of that. And this haunted house spectacle of going on to this ship that something terrible has happened and slowly piecing it together. I loved all of that. When they finally found that black goo and we started getting back into Prometheus stuff, that's where the movie started. It turned. And I was like, oh, he's keeping some of that in. I respect it, but I don't want people to start injecting themselves with black goo. And then it did. And then we got something. And I was like, I was fine with teenagers running from monsters in space. Why do we keep having to make these new things? You can't top Geiger. I know I'm skipping way to the end. My apologies. But the Alien movies became obsessed, starting with 3, about topping Geiger. And you can't. Googer? We'll never know. When that vial of stuff came out, I was like, oh, drag. And I was right. For myself. I was like, the movie it still had some great set pieces, but there's some stuff that was coming down the pike that I was like, I was ready to blast off. I was so happy until then.
Well, this is what as we got to the end of this, I felt like it tried to do too much, yet not enough. Because if it had just stayed in that space between Alien and Aliens, that was fine. And then the black goo, and it just kept adding on. I got to do another set piece. We got to do something else to pull in or reference or tie into this other aspect of the franchise. And I said, no, I don't need that. I think you pick the couple things that you've got really good and you go deep into them. And that was the thing that I felt kind of frustrated about, was it is the mishmash and it's trying to do too much. And as a result, I feel like the movie isn't doing enough, because what was great about the first one is it's just that crew on that ship, and it takes its time, and we spend time and emotions get ratcheted up. Aliens is just go, go, go action. And this is trying to do all of that. And you can't do all of it well. You can do all of it okay, but pick one or two. And that was my biggest frustration with this. Is I love the references. I'm like, but this is two movies. You've got too many movies crammed into here.
And if it's just sticking with the basic idea of Weyland-Yutani's the worst, they want a super weapon, I would be fine with that. But it wasn't. It was going back to Ridley Scott's obsession with evolution and what the creators were and the change of life. That's the too many movies for me.
Yes,
which I think
absolutely.
that Steve is also saying. If it's just, no, we're going to screw over all these people because, oh, look, a cool gun that shoots mouths out of its mouth, I get it. But the rest that is a little bit, I just can't go. I didn't want to go back to that world. What about you, Pete?
Well, I share the challenges that you guys have. Maybe not to the sort of
Vitriol,
the bile,
Woof.
the straight up acidic kind of
acidic bile.
As I'm watching you sink through your ball right now. I think the problem that I had was when you go back to playing the hits, so many of the hits were done so well because they were part of what I call my Alien, right? Like the Alien that I watched because my dad was watching it in his bedroom and I watched it under the door, because I was too young to see it. Like that's my Alien. And what I want is more of that. Those are the classics and I love those. And what I'm adjusting to, as Ridley Scott is a producer on this film and clearly worked with Alvarez hard on it to bring this new version of Alien to life. My Alien isn't Ridley Scott's Alien. it's not. It's just not. Ridley Scott's Alien is the alien of the constructors and the engineers and the black goo. I was also disappointed when she injected herself with the black goo. I found that unnecessary. Like, I knew we were going into this territory where we were going to try and create something new, and this highlights one of the problems that I had with the movie. If we're going to, we should just land for a few minutes in the axis to grind segment, because I have my axe is this movie has broken my understanding of alien gestation time.
Yes.
Everything
absolutely.
happens so damn fast, right? We have a chest burster, and it happens 6 minutes after she gets the thing she put on her face. Like, it's just movie time does not add up in this movie. And by the end, she injects herself, and before they're even a different she, right? A new she, Merced, as she injects herself with the black goo during the climactic thing. It's not like months go by. It's not even like hours go by. It's like minutes go by.
The black goo changes. The chest burster, I completely agree, is way too quick. The black goo makes everything an evolutionary nightmare. So we don't know. It's sped up, and then because you saw how fast that the baby alien hybrid grew, it just sped up 9 months into about 20 minutes. Whatever that was.
And that's my problem. That is my fundamental problem, because I think putting everything, like even the rat that we see on the thing, that video looked sped up, right? It looked like we were watching a time lapse.
Yes.
But on reflection, it might not have been a time lapse, right? It might have just been real fast, because stuff is happening fast in this movie, like irrationally fast. And I think the bigger problem is not that I'm stopping to think about it. It's that it happens so fast, it removes the intensity of the threat.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I'm not scared of it. Right,
Mm-hmm.
because it hasn't given me time to get scared. And I think that is a problem with some of the beats in this movie. Most of this movie I loved, and some of the beats of the movie I think fall apart. And the climactic battle with the newborn baby seed that she gives birth to, it does fall apart a little bit on that front, because it happens so fast, and she's running up and down the hills of seed that are in the storage locker below, and there are some cool action moments. The only time I lost sense of where I was in space is when she drops the tank from the ship and she gets pulled through it. It happens in a way that I didn't quite understand my sense of space, and yet the rest of the movie worked for me and was super satisfying. It was just that final reveal of human morph or xenomorph.
Right. Yeah, as soon as she injects herself, everything.
Yeah,
I was like, oh no, I was done. That was it.
No, I was too.
She's in her underwear. Like, don't do it.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. That's it. You got it.
Yeah.
But this was, again, too much, right? Because you can either have the ticking clock of we're going to collide with the rings and we got to get out here. So that's applying one type of emotional pressure to the story, which is one thing. It's condensing things, and we got this rush. But then when we have somebody be injected with something, then we get the slow burn build of what's going to happen in the suspense. And you can't have compressing time creating that and then suspense building. It just doesn't work. And you don't know how to invest yourself either way, because you're right, Pete. There's not enough time to be scared, because there's not enough time to process and think through, what does this mean? What could possibly happen? How could this go wrong? Right. And we need that time to let it sit.
By adding too much pressure, it's an accidental pressure release, because you don't have anywhere to put all that pressure anymore. And so you're like, well, now I'm just a little bit numb. And that part we're skipping to the last third right now, but when she injects herself and what happens gets to a David Fincher Alien Cubed level of hatred for its own characters. Like, I found that extremely upsetting and distasteful, even. I know that Alien...
Describe that. Which part?
When her birth, and then the horribleness of the birth, and then the baby going back and draining
nurse,
the last...
effectively.
To nurse, right? I guess. Like, that's really... I don't know. I get it that Alien is so much of a not a bastardization, an absurdist of the birth process can be seen analogous to how horrific human birth is. But this is just like, this gave me the feeling of like, oh, all right, like Newt died off screen. Like, okay, this sucks. Like there was promise, there was hope, and instead this is Fede Alvarez or whatever his name is, just grinding my face in something.
Well,
Because he's a
Yeah.
horror director.
sure, but
Right?
we still need
Like-
to care about characters
Yeah.
because I don't know this woman.
Yeah. Because
Right.
I didn't understand why she injected herself. So she just like, I was made to feel horror and grossness about a choice that I didn't understand or agree with in a movie
Well,
that
okay.
was already done.
Check me on this, though. Check me on this. How did she know that the alien goo blood was somehow rehabilitative? Was she in? She was in there.
She was there with them because he was going to inject her when Rain stops him, and so she was semi-conscious at that point of like it could heal her quickly, or oh no, we can put her in cryo. But again, there was
But
I
she
didn't-
hears Rain not trust it, say don't do it, and give her an out. Cryo will put you to sleep. And then, but by then, there's still even Rain's drugging along the black goo suitcase for no reason.
well, she needs to take that along so that Rook will let them get out of there because Rook won't
My
let that
apologies.
ship go.
I see.
So
That's a
that's her
smart. You're
that's
right.
her key to that. And again, there's a lot of parts. Some of them work really well. It's sort of like a horror / heist movie. You've got certain things, but again, because it's a horror movie, we've got to have meat to grind through, right? So we've got to have characters that are expendable. So I don't have time to care about them. But so much of what's going on is about people. That's the thing about the first Alien is there was that small crew. We took the time to get to know them and develop them, who they were. This is just like, character development in microwave. Boom, we're going to throw these tropes out there really quick. Oh, this guy's despicable. We'll do a couple things to make him loathsome. We do this. And we spent enough time developing Rain and Andy in that relationship. And there were things that should have paid off, and it didn't because I got distracted or I didn't have time to invest into a line where he says at the end of, about leaving somebody behind. And I thought there should have been emotional resonance that really, paid through. And I sensed that, but I didn't feel it. And that was the thing that really disappointed me because I didn't have enough time to invest in them in the right ways.
Is it worth rewinding and talking about the first 2/3 though?
Oh,
We
absolutely.
totally
I think
should.
so.
We
Because I
totally
thought
should.
the first 2/3 were outstanding. I liked the characters enough. I felt that there's that one despicable guy, but they gave him a reason to be really mean to Andy that I thought was interesting and scary about robots making decisions about self-driving cars, swerving to hit one person instead of 20. And I
Yeah.
liked their reason to go up to the haunted house because they wanted freedom. They wanted cryosleep
Yeah.
and freedom. I really like Kaylee Spaney, I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I really like her. I thought David Johnson as Andy made some really interesting choices.
Mm-hmm.
I loved David Johnson. I loved the
Yes, yeah.
character of Andy, and I loved the way he made that character come to life around changes to his programming. I thought that was just brilliant, and I know Tom especially was watching that thinking, maybe a robot could be my best friend.
For the first time, because I don't care
Yeah.
for AI or robots. And I was
Right.
like,
I know
"Oh."
you don't care for it, but
As soon as I
think
got
Andy,
home, I got out my Roomba from my closet and I just put it on the table and we just had a long look. I'll let you guys know how it turns out.
Waited for you to tell you some dad jokes and see what happened. Right?
One of the things that I also loved the most is this is a filmmaker. This is just for my own personal belief and maybe others, but this is a filmmaker that realizes that the scariest part, I think, of the entire alien mythos are the phasehuggers. And he
Mhm.
gave them to us.
Yeah.
We've never had chase scene. Well, I guess that locked room with Newt and
Yep.
Sigourney Weaver,
Yeah,
but that was one in
but
a locked
one-
room. This was them
Right.
like running off walls and stuff. I
Oh,
was
coming out
whenever that
the
happened.
door. Yes.
I was taking
Yeah.
my hat off and going,
Yeah.
oh, like that was so creepy, crawly, great. And then that really slow burn, don't sweat, don't have goosebumps.
Yep. Yep.
And I mean, oh, I thought that
That
was
was a
really
a
good.
major set piece for me. I gotta say, like that was a terrifying piece because, like we've and we how many times have we seen how many times have we seen this scene? It's like, don't we're gonna change the temperature and
Mhm.
it's gonna change the way we do. I mean, sneakers. Okay,
Yes.
Robert
No,
Redford
it's
did it, right?
Oh,
Like
right.
yeah.
it's been around for a long, long time. This whole that whole conceit, and yet because you're absolutely right, the face huggers are the worst. That made it terrifying, especially the way he sort of animated the animatronics
Mhm.
of the face
Because it was
huggers.
Yes.
practical.
It was all
Yes.
practical. It was
Yes.
so
Yeah.
Yeah.
beautiful, and they felt so real and grounded, and those people felt like they were running from those things that were crawling up the sides of the box. I
Ah!
thought that was exceptional,
Yeah.
exceptional, like thrilling action filmmaking.
What was your D-box during doing that? Were you just bumping all around? Because I saw it in standard, don't move my chair, no one sit behind me. I bought out a theater because I was so scared of getting scared out of my thing.
Yeah.
What
I have to say that the
or
highlight,
should
of
we
course, D-Box is going to vibrate and shake you around,
yeah.
but this movie was actually a great D-Box experience because anytime they change gravity,
Mm.
the D-Box
Oh,
just
neat.
lilted, right? And I
Mm.
just found myself moving with her. That the
Nice.
next major favorite set piece, after she just lays into the all of the xenomorphs at the end, she is on this catwalk and surrounded by floating acid blood because she turned off the gravity for that moment. But the ticking clock of the gravity purge, who I mean, what the hell is that? Who
Right.
cares? But what the hell
Yeah.
is that? Like that's just
Yeah.
that's a I dare to say this out loud about this movie. That's just a made up thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what that
Well, I
is.
think remember when they were first talking about the
Yeah.
gravity purge, someone in the background goes, "Yeah, like she did." It was like one of those. It was a finest hours kind of call out of like,
Yes.
quick, just go, just
Yeah.
have someone else agree, say
Yeah.
toolbox,
Yep.
and then we'll all
Yep.
move
Yeah.
with it. Yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
gravity purge, nudge,
yeah.
nudge,
Yeah.
and but that sequence in D-Box was great because I was floating with her and the blood, and then shake when it came back on. Like
Oh,
it was
nice.
exhilarating. It
That's
was
so cool.
exhilarating. Yeah, and I've been really kind of bearish lately. The last bunch of movies I've seen in D-Box have not been worth it. This one was actually really solid.
I have since I saw the movie, I read some reviews, and they were like, "This is a travesty. How could anyone think this was a good idea?" We meet an old friend from the first Alien.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was an interesting idea, really distracted by in a film that is so practical, incredibly dodgy face capture special effects. And I have to be completely honest and vulnerable. I didn't know he had died. And when I found out he had died, I know that they got permission from his family, but what are we doing? For some reason, once I found out he died, that changed everything. Because it's not like everyone looks like Lance Henriksen. We've seen a lot of different robots. We've seen a lot of different ashes that all look different. So that felt pretty gross, and especially because it didn't look good. Yeah,
It was disrespectfully bad
yeah.
CG. Yeah.
And I don't know. I was trying to think through the story reasons why. Why did it have to be that? Because I understand that if we're going to say they're mass manufactured, so they're all going to look the same. Great, but the rest of his body is all chewed up and eaten by acid, but the face is pristine. I'm like, rough that up. Give us
Right.
something to do.
Right.
So because it just looked too fake. It worked better. I mean, they took hints from like video games from like the 90s of like, oh, let's run it through video and distort that and throw some static in there, and then you won't see how bad it is, because that was fine. But yeah, he's talking, his mouth isn't articulating the way it should. There were just all kinds of things, which I know, okay, he's not a real person, it's an artificial person, that's fine, but it took me out of it so much. And I love the character. I love that what could have happened with that. I was distracted by that, and I felt like even his role, Rourke's role, could have been more sinister and ominous, as really that aspect of the company, of being that force that's going to continually get in their way to stop them from doing things. And I felt like, again, this is where it's trying to do too much and not enough. That dynamic could have been really powerful if we're doing the heist movie and really lean into that aspect of it. We got to do this. Great. Now we got to outthink Rook. How do we get what we want out of this? And that dynamic could have been very interesting because he's so intelligent. He's so distrustful. He's so, yes, there are so many great things you could do with that. There were some really interesting interchanges between him and Andy, where Andy said, "Oh, I can hear you in my head." Those types of things. I thought, oh, there was something there that just they didn't go enough with it for me. But first off, if you're going to do that, you make that face look so good, or you don't do it. That just be at this point, yeah.
From a story perspective, here's how I've wrapped my head around it. We already had Prometheus and Covenant, which I think were close enough together in movie timeline that Fassbender represented the
yes.
model line. But he played David and Walter across those two movies, right? Different characters, different models of the synthetic, right? And then we had Ash, and then we moved to Bishop. And my understanding is, because this movie happened so close to between 1 and 2, that when Bishop makes the case, oh, there was a lot wrong with those earlier models. I'm the new model. What they wanted to do with this movie is give us the old crappy model. Like, this is yet again the setup to Bishop's punchline later about how bad.
Right.
They were
always a bit twitchy, I think is the line.
They were always a bit twitchy.
Yeah.
Now, Andy's model was a colonizer model. So realistically, I think we can imagine a lot more characters that looked like Andy, but the science officers were Ashes. They looked like him, Ash and Rook. And so I kind of made peace with the fact that these aliens could look alike and make it be a thing. I don't think that's really satisfying when every time they go into that stupid office, like science lab, and look at him practically, he's stroking, I think, what would be his robot spleen, and his face looks like an Apple Vision Pro persona. Like, it's just floating there. It's terrible.
Yeah. That felt it. So, and because they didn't go through all, like, I kind of like the road that you just took us on, Pete, but without thinking it all the way through, it feels like the bad side of fan service.
Yes.
No one was like, oh, if only we could have more Ash. It's no discredit to Ian Holm, but they took that robot model and made it into something more and better. And like Bishop they played throughout Aliens of like, Bishop's the bad guy. No, he's actually the good guy. And then he comes back in 3 in kind of a thrilling way as potentially a real guy. I don't think 1,000% find out if he's, do you remember? Like, Lance Erickson comes back and says, I'm the guy that they designed all the robots.
Right.
I think that's true. But
he's injured in that last thing, and they keep part of the injury away from us.
Right.
As if there's a chance that he's, if I remember correctly, as if there's a chance he's bleeding milk. But yeah, so I don't. So
and they do make a big deal about hiding the bleeding milk on the planet.
Yeah. So if that was fan service, it was weird, and to not stick any of the landing makes it really disappointing.
Yes.
And especially because this movie is so much about our relationship with technology, as much as it is about our relationship with the military industrial complex and consumerism and the environment and what we humans do to planets when we get there. We're not great stewards. And this movie is full of so much of that to do such narrative service to the angle of, what is our relationship with our technology, and just flush it with such a lousy performance. I feel like a jerk, but it's just didn't play.
I liked the whole there's something in the war, the lead up to all these things was great, and to slowly have the temperature rising and things moving around. I mean, there was for a movie that at times becomes a thrill ride, like a mix between a thrill ride and a video game, there was he knows when to slow burn it.
Yes.
Also in a movie that is chock full of jump scares, they he's not just throwing jump scares. He's teeing you up. You're in his control even at times you don't know. I mean, the director with the pacing and stuff. There's some really cool lead ups, and the intelligence. There were some pretty unintelligent things the characters did, like if you're gonna take coolant out, wear a glove. A friend of the show, Darnell, suggested that. He also said if someone is having a seizure and kicks the joystick that makes the ship go, go
Reach
grab
down
the
and pull it
joystick.
back. Grab the joystick first. Yeah,
totally. But none of that ever hurt my intelligence like a cartographer who has a map and gets lost, or a biologist who immediately takes off his glove to touch something with teeth because he thinks it looks cute. That was just stupid. This treated it more like fallible instead of idiocy,
or believable idiocy. Like it was these guys have. Like I just didn't. Who knows what his job, the cousin's job, was on the planet, right? Like he maybe didn't know about the coolant or didn't know.
Oh,
what to
I
do.
see.
Like
because we were talking about scientists doing stupid things and cartographers being lost. Right, you're right.
These guys were the idiots. Like they were just the kids trying to get off the planet, and that made all of the dumb decisions totally believable to me.
That's a great point. Yeah,
I didn't fall out of that at all.
Oh, there was one near the end when she's pulling the levers, the dead man switches, and then it's like, wait, I heard something. It's like, pull the damn switch. Pull the damn switch. Pull the damn switch. Wait, am I hearing something? It doesn't matter. You know you got to dump this thing. Yeah, that one got me. But
dump it faster, dump it faster, dump it faster.
But then my son who was sitting next to me was like, well, if she did that, then we wouldn't have the rest of the movie. I'm like, well, yes, absolutely true. If the thing gets done.
And then the answer was, we don't want the rest of the movie.
we were already done.
Yes. But it was those typical things where, yes, objectively, you have to suspend your disbelief. And they are believable ones where you're like, well, oh, come on. Well, it has to work that way. It does. We have to move the story along. We have to have some things. I mean, there's certain things you get introduced and it's like, okay, how does it pay off? You know, is this just a cool setup? Because it was the first time we get the gravity on and off. I thought, okay, how much is this gonna play into it? And it's like, okay, we have to introduce it. It's Chekhov's gun. We've got the cool little X-ray torch thing, which I wish they had done more with. That was kind of a cool.
Yeah, they used it kind of right away.
Right.
So Chekhov was supposed to wait until the next act, not the next.
Yes. Well, that's where everything's happening so fast. But it played the way it should have. You got a bunch of miners that aren't smart in a science lab, so there's stuff that they don't know. They're not seeing the warning signs of like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be in this lab. Type of space. So it works. It does what a horror film should, because yes, their characters will always make decisions that aren't logical at the time, but it sets up what we need to happen. And it does it in a way that wasn't so frustrating that I thought, oh, this is ridiculous, right? Yes, it's to Tommy's point. We don't have scientists acting against, like that's fundamental knowledge. This is just, they're way out of their place. Although the question I did have was, so your miners, you've got a ship, you can just take off whenever you want. And now I know they can't get to where they want to go because it's 9 light years, but they've got a ship and they can just like blast off, go into orbit and go up to a thing without anybody saying anything. I'm like, is there not another planet? Was there not another place that they could go to? I've just thought, what's keeping you on the ground? If you can just take off at any point, like, I don't know. Just to see the sun every once in a while.
At no point did anyone stop and say, how far could we get on 3.5 years?
Yeah.
Like, do we have to go to this vacation planet?
That's interesting.
I
got the feeling there was like in the world building when you're seeing people striking and saying Weyland Yutani is lying to you. I got the feeling that the Ulvade or whatever it was, the vacation planet, was the closest one that Weyland Yutani was either didn't have or was livable, was my feeling.
And that's possible, I guess. But I also
could have used the idea of we really only have also enough fuel to get up to this space station, so we need the cryo stuff and the fuel, because it was jarring to have a bunch of space orphans just blast off into space At first, you were just like, "Oh, well, go somewhere else."
Well,
But
and
I
it's
think,
just like
yeah.
everybody else is walking by, like, oh yeah, they're just taking off. I thought,
Yeah.
like, you're disrupting the neighborhood, right? Is
Right.
that nobody's shocked or surprised that this happen all the time? Because
Yeah, those engines kicked on and somebody lost a bungalow. Like
Right,
that was
yes,
not the ship
exactly.
is like right in the
No
neighborhood.
one else
But
ever wants to see sun.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, hey, you need some money? Why don't you just, take people up for a half hour sun?
Yeah.
It costs you this many credits or whatever, and then
That's
you
right.
get some sunlight. Yeah, but fine. We needed to get them up to the haunted house. That was, I think that all those pieces worked. I like the logic of giving us like, okay, why is she so frustrated that she would commit to doing something that is so dangerous? Well, she's looking at 5 more years. Okay, she doesn't want to do that. Go along with this. Get up there. There's an opportunity. Great. All right. It's not what we thought. All right. Things start going wrong. Okay. I will walk this path with you. It was doing all the right things. As Tommy said, the first 2/3. Yeah, I was all on board for all of that. I thought it was well done. Like I said, I wish it had just slowed down and really let us sit with some of the pieces. But overall, yeah, I really enjoyed all of that. The front part. I thought, the only issue I had is, for me, at least in my theater, the sound mix was a little muddy combined with accents. There were stuff where I'm like, I'm not sure I caught is
Some
that
dialogue
key.
was lost. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that important information I need to have, or is that just I wasn't sure if it's just me or if the theater I was in, but there was some dialogue that I was missing on that one.
I had the same thing. Everything was turned up to 10, and so that might be part of the problem.
Gotcha.
Let's talk about Fede. I think you dropped Fede, and we like Fede's work. What do you like about Fede Alvarez as a horror director?
This is the second time he has taken on a beloved, don't touch this supposed masterpiece, looked at it in the eyes and been like, yeah, there's still more to do here. And I'm talking about Evil Dead, Evil Dead and this movie. And we also needed someone who needed to step back from the brink that Ridley Scott had taken this series on and was like, we need a lean, mean, too many monsters, not enough people, not enough guns, thrill ride, because we've lost that. When was the last time that you were really scared about going to see one of these alien movies? It's been a while for me. And so I love that he's just, to keep everything, I completely agree that things sometimes are too sped up and it overstays its welcome. But when it's working, it is firing on cylinders that I haven't felt in a really long time. It reminded me how scary Alien is. I had legitimately forgotten, because all I could see was those big dumb white people. Who are they? The engineers? The engineers. Yeah.
Yes.
Big dumb white people. All of a sudden, I just
that was great.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm talking about the aliens that maybe began life or didn't. Yeah, all of
You're
that.
talking about Charlize Theron, right? Because I think that was
right.
Michael Fassbender. Yeah. Okay. Steve, do you have a take on Fede?
No, because I'm not a horror fan, so I haven't seen any of his other films. But I was aware of his work and was familiar with his name and thought, okay, that's one of the draws for me to this, of knowing he's got his credentials in that, so that what he's bringing isn't going to be sci-fi action. It's going to bring some of that suspense. It's going to bring some of the respect for the core material, but bringing his skills to it. And that was the reason I was very excited for it. And I think there are parts that do, as Tommy said, do work really, really well. And it is very much, I had just watched Ridley Scott. I watched the director's cut, the 2003 director's cut. There were just a few little changes, but yes, this just feels like it just flows so much right on it. The look of the sets, all of the little production design, the signs, the logos, the countdown timers, the computer, the sounds as it's everything sort of booting up. All of that was like,
the
it just
opening
brought me
title
back.
reveal.
The opening title reveal. Everything just took me right back into that. The font of the titles, of just the names coming in, all of those things. I was like, oh, it is so much, paying homage to that piece. And yes, I respect him so much for that, of knowing what it needed to do and doing it well, really executing on the things like that it felt of a piece very much. Absolutely.
I love all of that. Is this the first time we've seen how mother is spelled? MUTHUR with slashes in the middle. It's like an acronym. I just always thought that that's what they just called it mother because everything's a bastardization about motherhood and birth and what's safe and what's not. But I don't remember ever seeing it.
In the first one,
it is
very, very briefly small, but only, and that's
like
on.
Tom Skerritt's always talking to mother in the first one.
He is, and we see it on the screen as Mother 6000.
Yeah. And is it a weird way? It's not spelled like Mother Dad.
MUTHUR.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. Then that's a great reference that I had never that I didn't remember.
Yeah.
I feel like this was a great place for Fede Alvarez to land. I never watched Evil Dead. I probably should, but I never watched his remake of or his addition to it.
It's
but
gnarly.
Don't Breathe. It's what?
The Evil Dead is really gnarly. Like he does not shy away from sustained gore. But I liked the idea of like when it was talked about being remade and Sam Raimi, they didn't know yet that Sam Raimi was sort of behind it. But everyone's like, how can you remake Evil Dead? And I was like, have you seen Evil Dead recently? We can absolutely easy. I think I could make that in my apartment. Like it was great for what it was, but it completely was really brushed off and gussied up by him. You were saying, but Don't Breathe, though. Yeah, that's a thrill.
Don't Breathe is fantastic. And Stephen Lang is great. And what an interesting set of characters to put together and to deal with closed space. And that kind of like, that's a vibe that I think he channels in this movie, right? Because the sets are, I mean, we talked about practical around the alien, but the sets are huge and glorious in this movie. My God, I could not, I mean, I wanted to creep around every corner. I felt about the space station the way I felt about the Millennium Falcon. Like this feels like it exists and I can walk around in it and I can push buttons and doors will open and I want to open all the cupboards and jump on all the beds and flush all the toilets. Like that's how I felt about this set. It was awesome.
Yes.
And I wish that they would have shown the gravity purge in a room that is wet. Because this movie also has a lot of wet rooms, and they never show us what that's like. I would love to
acid
watch.
Doesn't count?
Well, acid counts, but just the general, like, there's just so much wet.
Sure.
They're always walking around in wet
space
stuff.
Is sweaty.
Space is sweaty and drenched. I always forgot that. I forgot about that. I always think maybe there'd be some ice, I guess, floating in the rings, but just wet. That is actually an interesting point because the cryo chamber where they get the fuel that has all the I loved what they did to play with the face huggers in their like food saver bags. I thought that was awesome. And that room is full of water on the floor. And the first thing that the handsome boyfriend says when they walk into the room is oh my God, that's cold. And that to me said this is like space cold. But then why is the water liquid water? Shouldn't it be frozen? It doesn't take much to freeze water.
It's got other things in it that raises its freezing temperature.
Battery acid and
antifreeze stuff like that.
Antifreeze.
It said cryo. It said cryogener thing, and then soup. Did you not see the sign next to the soup?
You're right. It was the cryo soup room.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Heated floors.
Yeah. Do you think that there's room for everything? Like everyone gets its own little room? No. You have the aliens, and you have the cryogenic stuff, and then you have your Italian wedding soup right over here.
Well, it was great to play with cold in this one, since in the first one they go with fire. In the first, they've got their little torch things that there's in this one to go the exact opposite. I was like, oh, fun choice. It gives us different things to play with that we hadn't done before. And I also loved the little cattle prod, the supercharged cattle prod. Because that was something we hadn't seen either of. Will that kill the gestating one if he just goes to town on that? And it was like, oh,
spoiler,
it
did not.
It did not. It made it angry, but I thought, I don't know, because we haven't seen like what electricity may do to that. So I was like, it wasn't like, oh, dummy, it's gonna survive and you're dead. I was like, oh, maybe he got it. It created some great suspense for that, of playing with things of we don't know. reaction.
And a great
Yeah.
horrible outcome, right? Like a great
Yeah.
punchline
Oh
to that.
my gosh. Yes.
He's just he falls down and is just dripped on by the blood, and he dies. Like that was gruesome, just gruesome. Perfect. Well, this I think the movie ultimately for me is a win. I think it's does it successfully cleanse my palate from the stuff I didn't like about the Prometheus endeavors? Yeah, it does. It reminded me more than anything else that of the overall Alien timeline, this is my favorite part. This is my favorite era of Alien. My second favorite happens to be Celibate Prisoners.
Mm.
I
Okay.
like
Fincher,
I like
yeah.
those guys too.
Yeah.
So, but this one, this era, this tone, everything about this is my favorite part. So I think I was already primed to enjoy this.
I'm really excited for Noah Hawley's upcoming Hulu show.
We
About
didn't even talk about that.
It's about Wayland Yutani. He's like doing
Oh.
not Mad Men and Wayland Yutani, but he's talking about like the whole thing takes place in the corporation and the machinations.
Oh.
I have no idea if it's from its start, from when it's now. We don't know much about it, but Noah Hawley is by far he's my favorite showrunner, and so Wayland Yutani is fascinating. I mean, to go into that company and see the choices that they're making, I cannot wait. I'm so excited. We get that apparently pretty early next year.
This is Alien Earth. Is
that what it's called?
Title.
Yes.
That is what it's
Cool.
called.
Okay.
Yeah. And we should add, like, part of the promotional run for this movie has been awesome. Have you seen the facehugger plants and the chest burster plants
In the theaters?
in the theaters and on the streets? Have you seen any of these?
No.
I would imagine in LA you would have seen it. I was watching some of the just like social media clips of people who are just holding up their phones and showing people who are passed out on the side of the road, like just laying on a curb with a face hugger pumping on its face.
Oh, they're putting
They're
it out in the
all
real world like
over the place.
Smile? That's amazing.
And the first one that I saw was actually of a guy standing up in the middle of the premiere in maybe it was
seen.
LA, and he opens it up. And that's happened multiple times.
Yeah.
I think it's such an awesome, awesome, awesome way to promote this movie. It's just perfect. So
I love it. I have not seen any of that. Or I did, and I just assumed it was some weird, gross thing happening in Los Angeles. And I didn't look close enough. I was like, oh, that's not a rat, that's a face hugger. It's possible.
Mayday. Mayday. This is Foster's Hope Colony on LP-427. We are under attack by an unknown alien species. They're relentless, and our defenses are falling. We've lost contact with the terraformers, and the colonist supplies are running low. We don't know how much longer we can hold out. But in all this chaos, there's just one thing that keeps us going. The hope of joining the next real family of film podcasts member support program. We've heard tales of this incredible community where film lovers from across the galaxy come together to discuss and analyze movies that shape our lives. We know that by becoming a part of this family, we'll gain access to exclusive content and live events and a vibrant community of like-minded individuals. It's the one thing that gives us strength to keep fighting, to keep believing that there's a future beyond this nightmare. So if you're out there, if you can hear us, please help us. Not just to survive this alien onslaught, but to become a part of something greater. Help us to join the next real family of film podcast member program. It's our only hope. At a minimum, just send us a working computer that can access the internet so that we can visit truestory.fm/join. You know, truestory.fm/join. This message will repeat until help arrives or until our last breath. Foster's Hope Colony, signing off.
I think it's time for us to rank it.
Okay.
We're on Letterboxd, everybody. Letterboxd.com/thenextreel. That's where you'll find all of our ratings. And we're going to do it out of 5 stars, and half stars count for the two of you. And also, if it's a good review, you got to tell which movie you're stealing stars from to give to this movie. Because that's my
I still don't
my thing.
understand.
That's my thing.
I
Yeah.
just don't understand what that means.
Stars are a
The
finite
amount of
resource.
stars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Finite resource. No,
Okay.
I'm just messing. Steve, what are you gonna do?
What am I going to do? I don't know.
This is the part where you're supposed to know.
Yeah, I know, but it changed based on our conversation because it did remind me of all the things that it did really, really well. Because the problem is when you finish this, you're ending on a bad note with this. It doesn't end strong. It starts really strong. And so my initial reaction was like, ugh. So yeah, clunking it. Because if I just watched to a certain point and say, oh, I could end here, it would be a lot higher. So
Before
it
the
ends up
crowd
at 3.
team opens back up. Yeah.
It ends up at
Yeah.
3.5 stars for me. And I like, I get a little heart for this, but 3.5 because it lost some at the end.
Okay. Tom?
I'm right where Steve is. I wish I could say 3.75 because I feel like that's the closest to like 2/3 because I studied humanities in college and I don't know how math works. But I am going to go ahead and give it 4. Its failings are immense. Its winnings are phenomenal. And for so much of it, I was like, yep, I used to say this all the time in the podcast. I haven't said in a long time. It was even more thrilling than it needed to be. Like at times I was like, you could have restrained, you could have gone down by 15% and I still would have loved it. And instead he didn't. So I'm going to go 4. And I really look forward to seeing it again, not in the theater, but seeing it up to that part and then deciding, am I going to stop and let it just be,
Yes.
or am I going to try to find more love for what comes next? I doubt it. Because we shouldn't keep making new aliens that are vaguely look like other things. But so I'm going to go 4, which I think is high, but I'll allow it. Watch yourself, counselor.
I think that's great. I think that takes us to a 3.8, almost a 4 collectively. That's pretty good. Like that's kind of where you want to be anyway. So that will of course round up to a 4 because that's how it works. But I still think it's awesome, and I'm so relieved. I am so relieved that this movie didn't suck wholesale.
Oh no, I agree.
If you brought it out of Ridley Scott's, put it in this brand new guy's hands, did this whole rollout, and it was terrible, that would be potentially the death of the IP. And so this is
the IP, right?
Of this brewing. Oh, by the way, the hearts I stole from Argyle. I think I've taken so many hearts from Argyle. It's like a shell, like it's a hole in Letterboxd, but I'm going to keep mining for more and more stars from whatever Argyle was.
So, okay. Hey, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Coming attractions. Who wants to drop the bomb of what we're going to do next month? I think, Steve, you should do it. And you should do it in character, in some kind of character that is related to the property. Go ahead.
Okay. I can be a dog that jumps off a little plank of wood because I'm going to send a family down into the depths and they will come back and accidentally summon Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
You don't do it 3 times, Sammy. Don't do it 3 times. Oh, God. Yes, we're doing Beetlejuice, the sequel. I don't know. We talked ourselves into it during the member pre-show. And I think are we all going into it with the same amount of enthusiasm?
Yeah.
It's
I mean, Michael Keaton, if like it wasn't Michael Keaton or something, or if they were doing like Beetlejuice Babies and there was like a reboot, then I would not be. But I mean, there's enough people.
Yeah, Michael Keaton doesn't have to do this movie. Yeah, Michael Keaton doesn't have to do it. So I'm like, there's got to be something. I'm sure there's a hefty paycheck, but there's got to be something that I thought the reason to bring this character back has to be something compelling. And I'm mostly, it's sort of like back in the days of like, Friday the 13th, like, how are they going to bring, him back, Jason back for this one? I got at least that. It's like, well, how do they bring Beetlejuice back? I'm very curious. And then how do you keep that going? I'm curious. But bringing the cast back is enough for me that it's worth it.
This movie is set up to be extraordinarily satisfying because my expectations are pretty low. So I'm looking forward to it. We're going to do that next month. can't wait. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out and listening to us go on and on and on about Alien and how much we love the xenomorphs, but not the xenohuman morphs.
Nope.
We are excited to have seen the movie. We love that you hang out with us. Make sure you do all the stuff you need to do for your podcasts. Rate and review. Come hang out with us in Discord. We'd love to see you over there. And thanks for hanging out, everybody. On behalf of Steve Sarmento and Tommy Metz III, I'm Pete Wright. Meeting adjourned. The Film Board gathers. The gang of thugs is here to take on a movie currently in theaters, and this month, we're just trying to get out alive. We've injected ourselves with the black gooey blood and reprogrammed all our... Damn it, Tom. We've reprogrammed all of our... I don't even remember what the word is now, because you anchormanned me so hard. Synthetics. We've reprogrammed all our synthetics, and I'm sure if we could just find another elevator. The problem was, I was in here before the show, and I watched your cursor monkeying around, and I thought, surely he's just reading it. It never occurred to me that you were trying to anchorman me. God! All right. Oh, I got to do this whole thing again.
Okay, ready. Okay, synthetics. Okay.